Good evening, everyone. If you've just joined us, we are waiting for a few more board members to sign in, and we will begin shortly. Thank you for your patience. We're still waiting for a few more committee members to sign on. Sorry to keep you waiting. Mike, did you ever send Todd the new invite?
Yeah, and he confirmed that he got it.
Okay, great. I just spoke to Sarah. She's logging on. I think we have 8, David. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So we can begin. Good evening, everyone. This is Manhattan Community Board 5, State Licenses and Permits Committee. I'm Nick Athanale. I'll be your chair tonight. David Sigmund is going to be standing in as vice chair. Thank you, David. We've got one item on the agenda tonight. That's an application from Florsum LLC, doing business as Dazed, for a conditional adult use retail dispensary cannabis license at 33 Union Square West. Just one item on the agenda. Before we get to that, I'll open for new business. Is there any new business before the committee? If you've got new business for the committee, please use the raised hand button now. If you're a member of the public, you can do the same. Just click raised hand if you have any new business for the committee. Okay, seeing no new business, we will begin with the agenda item. I'll go through how we're going to proceed with the meeting. I will ask the applicant to introduce themselves and their team. I will then hand the meeting over to the committee, the team that reviewed the application, and I'll ask them to summarize the application. Since this is our first cannabis license, I'll also ask Catherine, who's the chair of the Cannabis Task Force, to give us a summary of the task force guidelines. Then I will give the applicant the opportunity to make any presentation they like. During any point in that process, anyone on the committee can ask questions or make comments just by using the raised hand button. After that, I will give the public the opportunity to speak, again, by using the raised hand button. After that, I'll put the committee into what's called a business session. During the business session, only the committee discusses the application amongst itself. At that point, no further input from the applicant or the public is appropriate unless requested by the chair. So let's get started with the application. I'll have the applicant please introduce themselves and their team.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Keyshawn Warner. I am one of three of the partners of Florsum LLC, operating as Dazed Cannabis. My two partners are Rich Raynone and Chris Vianello, who are also on the call. And we'd like to thank everybody for the opportunity to meet and present ourselves to you all today.
Thank you. Kaylin, what capacity are you on for?
Yeah, so Kaylin Castetter and Kate Ruby of the Castetter Consulting Group. We perform government relations, compliance, and regulatory advisement for the applicant for Dazed.
Got it. Welcome. Well, welcome to everyone. Okay, since this is our first cannabis license hearing, I'll ask Catherine to give us an update and a refresher on the cannabis guidelines that CB5 passed a couple of months ago. Catherine?
Hi, good evening, everyone. So in February of 2023, the Community Board 5 unanimously approved a report on the guidelines for the review of cannabis applications. That information is available on our website at www.cb.5, and maybe someone can post it in the chat. So in 2021, the state of New York legalized the production, sale, and use of recreational is a key word, cannabis, which is the ability of, which created the ability of the state to license retail cannabis dispensaries. With that, Community Board 5 convened a cannabis task force, and we were tasked with a few different ongoing and specific mandates. One was to interface with residents, businesses, and block associations, to share information, and to propose guidelines, which are the basis for the application that we have created. So our guidelines have some specific details about what we feel as Community Board 5, localize the adaptation of the state guidelines, not to interfere in either direction. Meaning, we don't interfere with the state's guidance, and the state's guidance doesn't interfere with the local municipality. So we ask that the distance any application within CV5 should be with no less than 1,000 feet within an existing cannabis establishment, 500 feet from a school, 500 feet from a community facility, 200 feet from a house of worship, 500 feet from a reduction facility. And for retail establishments, only the distance requirements should be 500 feet from a park and 1,000 feet from a playground. We also consider noise and mitigation. We are here to balance residential life, business conduct in a way that benefits all. So we also ask that no establishment located within 500 feet of a residence have operations and closure Sunday through Wednesday, 1 a.m., Thursday through Saturday nights, 2 a.m. When proposed, the cannabis license is located within any future, so we looked at the restricted licensing area. And so to the extent that any requirements in the what we call the LRA are more restricted than those in the guidelines, the application should comply with the more restrictive RLA. So what we're asking the applicant to do is to get to know the community, the way in which the community board has worked to establish balance between resident life in a very vibrant and robust place we know as Midtown, we know as, in this case, the Village, to engage its conduct and manner. So I'm not going to belabor anymore, but we have used the tools that the community board uses. We've posted locally, widely and locally, a public notice of this meeting and of the forthcoming applicant. We've distributed, and we've heard from some residents, we've heard from some institutions around the neighborhood. I'll leave that for further discussion later. And with that, I'm going to let the applicant continue with their presentation.
Okay, Catherine, before we turn it over to the applicant, did you want to summarize the application for us?
So again, this applicant is our first applicant in Community Board 5. They are one of a few in the city of New York. I did a site visit. The location is at 33 Union Square West. I did a site visit prior to their pop-up experience. They had an approved pop-up time period approved by the Office of Cannabis Management. The applicant participated in an online community meeting where there was input, and they had the opportunity just last week to meet with residents. Anyone who wanted to join could. And they were receptive to pushback from the community around chairs outside the establishment. I understand those chairs have been removed. They are an applicant that is within the RLA guidelines in terms of their method of operation. They have been willing to listen to community, and they have been forthcoming as an applicant within the guidelines of the Office of Cannabis Management.
So
They are a justice involved. They are a conditional retail dispensary, meaning that there is justice involved, leadership in place. And for those terms, you can look at the Office of Cannabis Management website. What that means in different operations is different, but this business does involve a justice involved local leadership, someone born and bred in New York City.
So Catherine, if you could walk us through some of the specifics of the operation, the size of the space, the hours of operation, things like that. Do you have that information, or should we ask the operator?
I'm going to let the operator talk about their application, and then I'll follow up again.
Okay, great. So, I
Nick,
think,
if I could just cut in here for a second, I was at that
Sure.
community meeting.
okay,
What Catherine said is a good, fair summary of what took place. And I fully endorse it. The only thing I would add is there was a discussion about some of the current topical issues about some of the dispensaries that have come up. And we did urge them to reach out to other people in the community and educate them about what they're doing and how they should be distinguished from the mass of illegal marijuana retailing operations in the neighborhood. And they were very sensitive and spoke about their method of operation. And although it's not open yet, obviously, they just have this pop-up operation, but they seem to be very sensitive to the issue of crowds and any perception of lawlessness, and seem to be ready to budget and have staff that's going to make sure that they fit into the community, and it's not going to be perceived in the same vein as some of these, illegal dispensaries. With that, I'll let them speak for themselves.
okay. So, first, I'd like to get some specifics about the operation. Keyshawn, if you could just answer some basic preliminary questions, the size of the space, the hours of operation, just the black and white four corners of the business.
Sure. Starting with the space that we're using, the full space of the store itself is just over 5,000 square feet. Currently operating as a pop-up, we are customers are only allowed to enter into about just over maybe 300, about 500 square feet of that.
Kate, do
Sorry,
you
I
have
think
something?
Yeah, I was just gonna say the square footage of the space per the floor plan, if Keyshawn is correct, is 2880. Now that's just the first floor. There is a basement. The operation though is the licensed premises consists of the first floor.
So
It's 2,000.
2,880 square feet is the
Yes.
licensed premises.
Yes.
Okay, great.
And we did include into the presentation a floor plan as well for reference and everything, so.
Okay, maybe we'll ask you to share your screen and show us that at some point. And the hours of operation?
Currently, we open from 8 a.m. to 2 a.m.
What
That's
are
what the
What are you asking for in the license?
well, we're asking for. Well, we were only going off for the guidance of the state. The state gave us the guidance of 8 a.m. to 2 a.m. to function. Our plan was to come into the environment and use it 30 days to see what is the most optimal time period, pending what the state allows us, and also what's relevant and to the environment of which that we're in. And we've been here for 2 weeks, and that's given us some time to kind of get an idea of, what is reasonable for the environment and what makes sense business-wise.
But for the purposes of this discussion, what hours of operation are you requesting?
We are requesting 8 a.m. to 2 a.m.
7 nights a week?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, so then I'll give you the floor. Tell us a little bit more about you, your operation, your plans.
Sure. So I am, again, my name is Keyshawn Warner. I am a native of New York. I'm from the east side of Manhattan. I am one of 3 owners of the dispensary with my partners, Rich Raynone and Christopher Vianello. I'm at work right now. I'm in the store, so if you hear a little background noise, please forgive me. We are occupying the former Dillon's Candy Store at 33 Union Square West, for those who may be familiar. Currently operating as a 30-day pop-up under the CARD program that the Office of Cannabis Management and the New York State has put together for people who qualify as justice involved, of which I am. And with that, we qualify for this program to be one of the first operators in New York State as a licensed adult use retail dispensary. We also are already have been in the industry for 2 years now, operating another adult use licensed dispensary up in Massachusetts. So, we come to the area and to the New York market with 2 years of previous business experience, and we're looking to duplicate the success that we have up in Massachusetts here in New York. Again, we're looking to operate 7 days a week from 8 a.m. to 2 a.m. But like I said, that's just what was the idea coming in, understanding that that was what the state gave us guidance on. So that was all that we had made to use as reference. But obviously being in the store now, the main guidance on the time that we want to open and close would be, again, the relevance to the area, not wanting to be a good steward to our neighbors and not be a nuisance. Also what makes sense business wise, because we are operating a business, we want to be successful financially, and along with what the state guidance provides for us. So those are the three metrics that we'll use to determine ultimately what the times that make most suitable for operations. We have heard and took into consideration some concerns and some feedback and comments during last week's phone call, Zoom call. And those are the things that we are happy to take into account, because it helps us to assess, again, if we're doing the right things business wise, and we're doing the right things as far as being good tenants and good neighbors to our fellow business and residents in the area. But ultimately, we're looking to make the most of this program and be one of the flag waving for this program for New York State. A lot was rise on this program, and we're looking to make it successful, because ultimately it's just it provides extra jobs for New Yorkers, and it puts New York at a great light in this industry.
Okay. So why don't we go through the points set forth in the guidelines, and you can tell us about that. So Catherine, help me walk through these requirements. First
Sure.
is that no operation shall be within 1,000 feet of an existing operation. I assume that's correct?
That's clear. Right,
And
that's
that
correct.
applies here.
Mhm.
500 feet of a school.
That's true, but we've also made some effort to reach out to local public schools that are just beyond the 1,000 feet criteria, because we feel it's important.
200 feet of a religious institution.
Right. Yes,
500 feet from a harm reduction facility.
as far as we know. We've heard from them.
And then 500 feet from a park, 1,000 feet
Well-
from a playground.
1,000 feet from a playground. We can't ignore that the applicant does sit just juxtaposition to Union Square Park.
So this application is within 500 feet of Union Square Park?
Union Square Park, yes.
Okay. All right. And then with respect to hours of operation, the applicant is requesting 8 a.m. to 2 a.m. 7 nights a
2 a.m.
week. Our guidelines require Sunday through Wednesday, 1 a.m. Keyshawn, would you be willing to modify your application for hours no later than 1 a.m. Sunday through Wednesday?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. And certainly,
Yeah,
if you decide in your business sense that you want to close earlier, that's certainly fine. But for the purposes of this discussion, we need to know the latest hours will comply with our guidelines.
right. Yeah. So again, like I said, the 8 a.m. to 2 a.m. was us coming in with the only guidance having come from the OCM that we have to follow. And then the second, would be, again, trying to be good stewards of the neighbors and what business makes sense. So, we already knew, we came in with the mindset of adjustments could potentially be made, obviously.
Okay, so you're agreeing that you won't be open later than 1 a.m. Sunday through Wednesday?
Yes.
Okay, great. We do have to discuss the proximity to Union Square Park because that violates our guidelines. We'll have to discuss that at committee. Anything else with respect to this application that you would find helpful for us to know, Kishan, or anyone else?
Yeah, I think Keyshawn, we'd love to share the renders of the final build. A little context. With this pop up, this is a state program. So DASNY is actually procured the real estate and is coordinating with a design build firm to build it out. The design build firm is world renowned and does retail locations in places such as Citi Field, Yankee Stadium. Have done close to 400 dispensaries nationwide, and we're really excited about what this place is going to look like after the full build is completed. Is really going to be one of the nicer stores potentially in the country. So if you guys would like, I can share my screen and show you guys the floor plan and the final renderings.
Yeah, we can look at that for 30 seconds.
Let's see here. Trying to present the way that. Okay, do you want to put it on the screen?
I'm not sure how relevant the build out is to the committee.
It's fine.
Certainly, I'd certainly be happy for you to present it if you can, but we can't spend a lot of time on the build out because our guidelines don't really address those.
Okay. I don't know if you can see that well enough here.
Mhm.
Yeah, so this is the final build out and renderings right here. So it kind of shows the story and everything, and this is what the store is going to look at from the inside. As you guys can see, a very clean, great space. These are the final floor plans here. And yeah, as you guys can see, we've got crowd control measures. There's, like I said, professional design build firm and engineer, as well as cameras that cover every square inch of the sales area and also back of the house area to comply with the OCM guidelines.
Great. Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
The next thing I'd like to address are the comments that we received at the community meeting and to the board office. There was an issue with crowds outside. There was seating outside. Who can tell us about that? Catherine, are you familiar with that?
Yes, so even on my site visit, I did see the chairs sitting outside. They were raised at the community meeting, and my understanding is that the chairs have since been removed from
Okay,
the sidewalk space in front of the building.
okay. Kishan, do you have any issue keeping chairs off the sidewalk?
No, it's not a problem for us. We just, like I said, we discussed at the meeting. We had the chairs out there initially because we had on our first days open, we had security, and that's when we had security posted outside. But then as we scaled back the security and having them posted outside, we left the chairs outside just thinking, hey, this would be neighborly. People walk by, there's a lot of foot traffic, so maybe they want to sit down. It was during the time when we had some nice stretch of nice weather. So we thought it was a nice, friendly thing to do to the community, but we heard that, it didn't provide the feel that we wanted to, so we removed the chairs. It's not a problem.
Okay, and then the other thing I heard was that there were complaints of people using product in front of the store. Is that
Right.
correct?
So, yep. So, and that's why we had security posted outside. Everyone must, understand that there's still people still do not understand the difference or how to differentiate between the legal and an illegal location. And so the things that they're used to doing, going to the various illegal locations around the city and around the area where they can go inside and purchase and come outside and consume, and, that thought process is still there. And so what we had between myself and security, educating those people who, thought they had the same leeway as their illegal spaces. We educated them and they were told, okay, this is not the place. You can't carry on the same way as you would someplace else. It's not allowed. And they moved on without an issue. So it's more of an education piece to let people know that, you know, this is a legal location and it's not prohibited around here. And so taking the chairs away definitely helps that, because it kind of gets away from that comfortable, hey, let me just relax for here a few minutes kind of feel. So it leans more back towards your typical retail experience where you'll go into a shopping experience, purchase your goods, and then, you know, proceed from there. So
that brings up a good point about security. Can you tell us about your security plan?
yeah, so we have 2 points of security. The main aspect of our security is the security cameras, and we have about 20 something currently, which will expand once we have full build out of security cameras inside and outside facing the establishment. And on top of that, we also have hired armed security that we have 1 or 2 people posted daily at the front doors and inside the store. Some are inconspicuous and some you can, you know, plainly see, to provide that, you know, physical deterrent.
You said 1 to 2. Is it 1 or 2, or does it vary?
It varies.
How does it vary? When do you use 1? When do you use 2?
Normally you bring in 2 on the weekends, but we're still trying to find what our highest times of volume is. So right now we don't have a standard 1 or 2 time given yet. This is still within our 30-day, you know, our early initial operating time. We're still just trying to get a feel for the ebb and flows of business.
Got it. You said that there are 20 cameras. Who's monitoring those cameras and for what?
Is a company called Myers that was contracted by the state, and they work in tandem with the state, and they're actually contracted to do all of the state licensed dispensaries. They have standard fire and police and EMS monitoring from their home base.
And what are
Yeah, and
go ahead.
may I add to that, please? So yes, so Keyshawn is in full compliance with the security requirements laid out by the OCM. Those requirements were verified, if I may share my screen, in a pre-operational inspection where the OCM inspectors tested several things related to the security system. They tested to make sure that, yes, in fact, the entire licensed premises, 365 degrees, are covered by security cameras. Now, those cameras, per the guidance, Keyshawn has to ensure that he has access to the system that he has access to footage, a way of recording if, say, for instance, the internet goes out. He also is required to notify the OCM as well as local authorities of any breach or an outage if an outage occurs. The OCM also tested Keyshawn's ability to bring up time-stamped screenshots. So, for instance, while we were there at the inspection, Keyshawn had to bring up a screenshot of the inspectors walking into the premises, which he did successfully. The Myers Security implemented the security plan, which I will again share here, although Kaylin went over it briefly. If I might share my screen here. Share screen.
Well, Kate, what I would say to you is there is a copy of the inspection, a certificate that you all have that shows that you're in 100% compliance. So if you could please send that to the office, we'd like to have that on file.
Sure, yes, I will forward it to you guys, but actually, if you're seeing my screen, I have it as the last slide in our presentation. This is
The compliance
an email from the
certificate.
OCM. Yeah, but I will email that to you.
Okay,
Thank
great.
you.
So the premises is in compliance with the OCM requirements. Just for our own edification, these cameras are just for recording, or are they being actively monitored? Couldn't
They're
hear you.
being
Well,
actively monitored. So Myers installed it, but I believe the company is American, but I can confirm that as well. So
And-
they're being monitored 24/7 by a central monitoring.
And what are they
system.
being monitored for? For theft?
Oh, they're being monitored.
Or
Yeah.
what?
Fire break-in, they're also being monitored for diversion from inside premises, say employee theft. Diversion meaning taking product from illegal well, I mean,
Yeah.
that's why they're
So,
there. I mean, they're there for.
Got it. And what measures are in place to check ID, make sure people are of age? How does that work?
We have a system that is a digital age verification component at the front door. So anyone who presents themselves at the entrance has to provide state issued ID. It gets scanned at the front, which will verify that the person is of age, 21 and older. And if it by a green light, and it'll actually show the age, and if they're under 21, it'll flash a red light and the age of the person. And at that point, the person will not be allowed inside.
So that age verification system is electronic, or is there a person monitoring that?
It's both. It's the person. We have somebody called a meet and greeter who will greet the customer coming in. They'll take the customer's ID and they'll scan it in the system, which will verify the age for the bartender. Well, the meet and greeter. At that point, they either be allowed in or denied access.
Okay, so at all times, there's a meet and greet person at the door checking ID and using the age verification system. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
In addition, I would like to point out that the business does use, and you can confirm, the frosted glass that's necessary to sort of shield public, the luring of young people who are not supposed to be there looking in, and that there is a decal on the front of the premises that allows people to know that it is a legal dispensary. Please confirm those two.
That is correct.
All right. I'm out of questions. Any other questions from the committee? Craig?
There's Kevin.
Thanks, Nick. So Catherine had I think it was Catherine that had mentioned that there were no schools within 500 feet. Now, I know there's the International Children's School, but that's within another building, so that I don't think would qualify for the 500-foot rule. Clinton Middle School / high school, because there's both a middle school and a high school within that building. It's a standalone school. It was actually built a couple of years ago specifically for that. Is that school within that school is not within, I just want to confirm that school is not within 500 feet, because it's probably
The
on the
school
cusp
measure-
of it.
Yeah, it's on
sorry,
the cusp.
sorry, let
So
me
if
finish.
this-
Sorry,
Okay,
Catherine, let me
sorry.
finish my question. Is the school, because it's probably on the cusp of it, and during your deliberations prior to this meeting, because I know that were you able to get a hold of anybody from the school to give their allow them to give any commentary? Thank you. Sorry, Catherine, I just wanted to finish that
That's
second
fine.
part.
Nick, may I address
Yes, please.
the question? Yes, okay, so the Clinton's, so the school does sit on the cusp. It is probably with just beyond the 1,000 foot guideline. We did deliver public
Wait,
notice.
1,000
as
feet
well
or
as
500
it's-
feet?
It's 1,054 feet if you want to count. So
Okay,
beyond the premises.
got it.
From the premises. In addition, we did deliver both public notice, and we actually wrote the school for public comments, along with a few other high schools that are in the area. So notify them that this dispensary and to ask for comment. So
And
my
did you get
knowledge
any?
from CB5,
Nobody
we received no response. And we did
So
that
Did you? Sorry, just
more
one
than 10
follow.
days ago.
Thank you again. One follow-up. I know there's a high school on the other side. It's actually 4 high schools in the same building on Irving. Was that one of the places? They're definitely going to be beyond 1,000 feet. I'm sure of that. But
Yes.
was that? It was okay.
So
Thank you.
we also looked, right, so we looked at vicinity or proximity that wasn't legal, that like in the area. Because
Right.
high school students are high school students, and they're gonna be
Absolutely.
moving through the area. So what I will say is the Board of Education is likely to have its own set of guidelines and rules, just like we've seen. We've also contacted wherever there are young people, vulnerable populations. We try to really do a deliberate outreach to staff in those institutions.
Okay. Buzz?
Thank you.
Yes, I thought there was an addiction facility at addiction remediation facility at 25 East 15th Street. Is that true, and are you compliant with that? And before you answer, can you address the question of Union Square and the playground? You know, there is a playground right there in that area of Union Square. How do you plan to address that and both the restrictions on the distance from the park and from the playground? Those are three places that I was concerned about.
Thanks, Buzz. Before we let the applicant address those questions, Mike, do we know anything about a facility at 25 East 15th Street?
Not that I'm aware of, no. I don't know if Catherine came across one.
I did not.
Buzz, what can you tell us about that?
What I can tell you is that we live at 25 West and our doorbell is constantly rung by people looking for the 25 East facility. I don't know. There is a registration desk in the front going into that building. I have never looked into it.
So he's
The only
right.
real knowledge I have is that people ring our bell at 25 West and say they're looking, is this the doctor's office? Is this the facility, the
Yeah.
addiction facility? And we say, no, go 25 East.
So you are correct. A quick Google search does reveal a drug rehab center called
Yes.
Realization Center at 25 East 15th Street. Is that within 500 feet? Would you
I
say?
think you'd have to check that and see. It's pretty close to 500 feet. Actually not, because it's on 15th and you're between 16th and 17th. So maybe it is farther away.
Okay. All right, so
And is the-
he's,
yeah.
who's talking? Catherine, go ahead.
Yeah, so, what I will say is, Buzz, thank you for the input. We can follow up directly. It's not clear to me that that facility is a place in which the actual treatment happens. That it may very well be an office space, so we will
No, I
verify.
believe it is a treatment space because
Okay, that's
the,
fine.
the people who come to our door are looking for the treatment space for
The
them.
doctor.
And their
so-
website does imply that it's treatment.
Yes, it is. It's
Okay.
definitely treatment.
Okay, great.
Okay.
And can you address the park and the children's playground?
Yes. Keyshawn, did you want to touch on that?
So I can't speak to it officially as far as like measurements and distance. The space was, what I can speak to is that the Dormitory Authority of New York were the ones who were tasked with finding and getting this location. And my understanding is that they did their due diligence and assessed all of these locations and made sure that we were outside the distance, the required distances to the sensitive places like schools, churches, rehabilitation centers, so forth and so on. I'm not privy to the park and the playground location. I would assume that, being in the dormitory for the state of New York, that they would know that and take that into consideration. But I would have to circle back and follow up with official answer for that from them.
Yeah, and add to that,
Please understand that these may be Community Board 5 findings and not state, and I'd have to ask
Yeah.
people to
Yeah.
confirm that.
So-
That is correct.
just to add on to that too, as Keyshawn said, the Dormitory Authority of the State of New York did, qualify these properties based on the guidance, regulations, and statute under the cannabis law and the OCM. And, it is compliant with those guidelines. And while the applicant, we do understand that there is, separate and additional, guidelines passed by the community board. I would say that the guidance and regulations does prescribe for community facilities that do need to be defined through an ordinance, which obviously would go through the city council. So that's, we became aware of some of the specific community board guidance, as you will, recently. And we're definitely, sensitive to, figuring out, like I said, there's a lot of measures that is taken by the applicant, based on the regulations and guidance to ensure that not only the store isn't attractive to youth, but actually products, right? So there's very strict product marketing and labeling, advertising regulations that ensure that products are not marketed towards youth, unlike those that are unlicensed. And so this is very important for us as a licensed operator to be following those guidelines.
And
Great.
if I may just add, the reason why Keyshawn's front window is iced out is because of his requirement to, number one, not brand his store in any way other than the name that notates that, other than the sticker on the front that says it's licensed and legal. He's not allowed to put a big sign with a pot leaf out front per the state guidance. He's not allowed to have either his store branded in such a way that would make it attractive to youth, and neither is he allowed to have any product that's considered attractive to youth per the state regulations. And as part of Keyshawn's ongoing compliance requirements,
Oh, we just lost you, Kate.
his staff on a regular basis when doing product intake has to verify that all products that are taken into the store are in compliance with those packaging and labeling requirements. And if not, if the OCM comes in, an inspector comes in and he is non-compliant product on the shelf, that product is getting quarantined and Keyshawn is going to lose money on that product.
Got it. But then to come back to Buzz's question, so the requirements of the dormitory authority and the cannabis law is not necessarily consistent with the CB5 guidelines. And while CB5 restricts operations 500 feet from a school and what have you, the state laws may not be consistent with that. And then to address what Kate was saying, the reason CB5 impose these restrictions, especially with respect to parks and playgrounds, is not that we're worried about the product being attractive to children, but people buying the product at the location and then having very convenient access to a park and a playground within which to use the product. I think that was the reason why CB5 added those restrictions to our guidelines. Samir, you had your hand up.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say that I checked the distance, and as the crow flies, so if you took a map and you just took a ruler, it's 320 feet from the harm reduction facility.
320 feet.
Yep.
I'm not sure that's how things are measured. I think they do measure, Mike, maybe. Yeah, I don't know if they measure how the crow flies. I think they do measure
I see.
in real distance. If you could
Got
do
it.
that, if you could do that for us, by any chance, that would be helpful.
Yeah, I'd be happy to.
Okay. And then if you could also measure the distance between that and the park and the playground, those would be helpful data points as well.
Sounds good.
Craig, you had your hand up?
Sorry, that was from before, although I'll say the harm reduction facility looks like it's right across the street from Clinton. So it's probably, the middle schools, the middle and high school. So it's probably a similar distance.
No,
Buzz,
it's
I've
not.
got
No,
copies.
no, the entrance to the school is much further down the street
Okay.
than
Okay.
the entrance to 25 East.
Yeah,
Right,
I don't know
I
if it's
think
entrance
that
to the school
19.
itself. But anyway,
Okay, so we'll give Samir a little time to do his measuring. Thank you for doing that. We'll get back to those 2 points. Janice.
Thanks, Nick. Yeah, I guess in the meantime, I want to ask a question that isn't necessarily requisite to the application, but just on this note of educating people who just don't know the rules, I was wondering if Keyshawn might consider maybe some more proactive means of education as opposed to just relying on security, to just stop people when they do the wrong thing. I wonder if that might address, if that's something you could consider to help address some of these issues.
Yeah, that we would, like, for instance, like what would be a suggestion? Like, because I would be open to hear some suggestions if you had one.
Okay, we can certainly put something
Yeah.
together and
And also the state has also, they have a bunch of funding for education, and they're rolling out more programs. And, Keyshawn, and we'll work with the OCM to take the materials, education materials that they have and try, to educate customers as they come in and out of the store. And like I said, work hand in hand with the state to do that. But, thank you, Janice, for that suggestion. That's a great point.
okay, Samir's still working on the distances. Anything else from the committee before I go to the public?
I was able to just quickly calculate them, so.
Okay, what do you have?
For the door to the harm reduction facility, so if you're walking on sidewalks, it'd be 475 feet. From the dispensary door to the park is 40 feet, because it's right across the street. And then the dispensary door to the playground inside the park, so Evelyn's playground would be 375 feet.
Okay, thank you. That's very, very helpful. Anything else from the committee before we go to the public? Okay, would any member of the public like to comment on this application? Please click the raise hand button now. We're in public comment now. If anyone from the public would like to comment on this application, please use the raised hand button now. Okay, seeing none, we will go into business session. As a reminder, during the business session, only the committee discusses the application amongst itself. No further input at this point from the applicants or the public is appropriate unless requested by the chair. So I'll start the business session with the obvious red flags. The distance to the harm reduction facility is within our guidelines. The distance to the park is within our guidelines, and the distance within the for the playground is also within our guidelines. So I think our hands are tied given those 3 points. But I'll certainly hear discussion. Buzz, did you want to start?
Yes, I rather felt from some of the words that were said that the applicant and their advisors feel that the state law supersedes any requirements levied by the community board. I don't quite know how that gets resolved. We have that when we're doing liquor applications. We have things like the restricted licensing area. And of course, closing hours officially for bars is 4 a.m. in New York City. You know that we legislate and come to agreement with liquor serving establishments for hours that are much, much different from that for a variety of reasons. I am wondering if we'll be able to come to similar agreements. Well, I don't know how we mitigate these distance things.
Yeah, and I don't know that they can, and unless this committee is prepared to overturn the guidelines, which we can't really do.
Right.
I think the reason we have guidelines is so that we can fairly and uniformly consider these applications. So we really don't have much discretion given these 3, not just 1, not just 2, but there are 3 ways that this location is not acceptable under our guidelines. Todd?
Yes, so it's certainly not complying with the community board's our guidelines as compared to the state guidelines. And our cannabis task force knows from our research about the issues surrounding how the state placed and the dormitory authority placed its various sites, that they didn't really pay proper attention to these issues. So I think that in many of the situations where we have guidelines, although it's not in place currently, we have a certain amount of discretion to, vary from the guidelines based on other factors. We don't have that yet, but I guess we'll learn as we go along. The only thing I would say is based on what I've read and what I've seen from some of the other places, we may be binding ourselves. My sense about this applicant is that they are a good applicant and they're availing themselves of the laws as they exist. I don't know, I mean, it's not like they're way in violation of some of the guidelines. They're close in some areas. So we have to consider this if we're going to stick to our guidelines and establish a precedent. I mean, this is the first one we've considered. I think we have to be prepared as we gain experience to go back to our colleagues on the rest of CV5 and maybe consider the flexibility and discretion that we have for some of the other scenarios we use. The other thing that we have to consider is, there are so many of these illegal places that are breaking every rule under the sun that we're trying to uphold, right? There's something to be said if we have a good operator that is more or less in compliance, mostly with what we've come up with. If we're so rigid that we have to turn them down, that may not be the wisest thing for us to do. But it's just something that we got to think about, because my sense after we did the community meeting is that this is a good operator. Anyway, that's just something I hope everybody thinks about.
So Todd, your points are not mutually exclusive. We can conclude that this is a good operator, but that this is not an appropriate location based on our guidelines. Those are not mutually exclusive positions. Craig?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say, Nick. And we have, from the liquor licenses, we've said many times, this is a great operator. We like you. We think you'll do a good job, but you shouldn't be in this location. Or you're a great operator. We like you. You shouldn't be open till 4 a.m. in this location because it's just not appropriate. The committee and the board as a whole set guidelines. And if we start saying, well, the guidelines don't work with the state law, so we just should, then why even have the guidelines in and of itself? I think we do put in language, if we did deny this, we do put in language saying that we think this is a good operator, and in another location, we would be supportive or something to that effect. But this does not work with our community. Our community has spoken and said we don't feel it's appropriate to have something near a harm reduction facility. Our community has spoken, and we don't think that it's appropriate that it's 300 and something feet from the playground. And if we do this enough times, maybe the state will listen. Maybe they won't. But I think that we set guidelines because this is what the community felt was appropriate, and I think we have to stick to it. And I feel bad because I think Mr. Warner seems like a wonderful applicant, and I think that he would be a very good and valuable member of the Union Square community. It's just I don't. If we feel this location is not appropriate, then the location is not appropriate.
I agree. Sarah?
Yes, I walk on 15th Street and Union Square West all the time. There are tons and tons of kids that seem to be age 12, 13, 14, running around there, and that's fine. But maybe this is not the greatest place for a cannabis dispensary.
Thank you, Sarah. Samir?
Yeah, I mostly just want to echo what Craig said about the guidelines. Like, we have them for a reason. If we think that for whatever, let's say we have 5 or 10 applicants and they all get rejected because they don't match any of the guidelines, then maybe we should revisit those guidelines. But at this moment, I don't think that would be appropriate. And I think we should stick to the guidelines that we have.
Thank you. Does anybody feel differently?
So this is Catherine.
Yes,
So
Catherine.
I've done a few site visits. One on a Saturday morning while the vibrant farmers market is happening. One later in the evening when, it's a different crowd. And so there are still all different kinds of things happening in Union Square. I do think that the guidelines give us what we need for local adaptation, and adaptation is a key word. So I'm interested to see if the applicant you know, they spoke about being good neighbors. Can they engage the park, the Department of Parks, the harm reduction facility, and work out something that comes back to us, that says something about their ability to navigate in a community where there are vulnerable populations, there are all kinds of people, which is true all over the city. But I think that the community has done a good work in establishing guidelines based on input. The applicant does have the opportunity for engagement, for proving itself as a good neighbor, the potential as a good neighbor. So that's what I would say to the applicant. Otherwise, we did put these guidelines together with good input from the community. And so as we're moving forward, we do want to adhere.
Okay, anything else?
Oh, and the last comment is some ways we get around this also have to do with method of operation and hours of operation. That might be of help.
Great. Okay. Craig, I think you were the first one to speak on this. Do you have a motion?
Yeah, I make a motion, regretfully, but I make a motion to deny the application.
Okay, to elaborate on your motion, we will comment that we think the operator is qualified, would be a good operator, but because of the proximity to a harm reduction facility, to the park and to the playground, that's the reason for our denial. Is that your motion?
Yes.
I'm sorry, Todd, we're in a motion now.
Okay.
Did you have
Yes,
a comment to the motion?
I hope I can see we could add language to the motion referencing the fact that the dormitory authority, which is placing these things all over the city, is not taking into account, the issues that are important to the community board.
Sure.
In spite of the fact that we have an outstanding candidate. And, it's just tragic that we're trying to see some legitimate operators and dispensaries finally get out the door when we have all these illegal ones. And here it is, we're rejecting what is otherwise, a good candidate.
So will I consider that a second of the motion, Todd?
Yes.
Okay, let's take this to a vote. David?
Look. Athael,
Yes.
Buzz, oh, drop off. No,
Yeah, his screen is off.
Borden,
Wait, Buzz, your vote?
Buzz,
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the motion.
The motion to deny for the reasons that we discussed.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Borden,
Yes.
Dosen,
Yes,
Ellington,
Yes.
let's see. Joseph is absent. Isaacs, no. Bridget Killian, no. Samir?
Yes.
No. Todd?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Slutskin?
Yes.
Is PJ on? No. Zona?
yes.
And Janice.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay. Thanks, everyone. Kishan, thank you. We appreciate your cooperation. I'm sure we'll continue to work together. Maybe at a different location. We'd certainly prefer that. But I have a feeling one way or another, we will continue working together.
Appreciate
All right.
you guys this evening. Have a good one.
Thank you so much. Okay, we
Thank you.
did new business at the beginning of the meeting, so we can adjourn. Have a good night, everybody.
Thanks, Nick.
Thanks.
you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Thanks, Catherine, for all your work on this. Oh, she left. Oh, well.